Today I'd like to cover elective line construction principles. So this is the scenario. We've collected all the kids' preferences. So we usually start with the higher year levels, year 12. In this case I've got a combined year 11 and 12. Because it's the last year of schooling for those kids tend to get the priority. So we start with them first. And this is like our foundation. If we use the analogy of a building, I'm putting my foundations down first, around which I'm going to build everything else. So elective lines tend to be the foundational posts. So the principles that we've got is, first of all, to satisfy the students' choices, and the year 12s are probably a higher priority than any of the other year levels in the school. So the classes that the kids choose, we want to make sure that we can actually allocate them those classes. So we've collected their preferences. We've looked at the number of kids that want to do classes. Schools will then make some very critical decisions about how many classes to run. It's very difficult if you're only running single classes, or what's called singletons. That makes it very hard to satisfy kids' choices. Within the group of subjects, hopefully you've got some multiple classes somewhere that give you flexibility. And in all of this, you really need software. Back in the olden days, we used to use a conflict matrix and put this together by hand. But these days, it's way more complicated, and there's lots of good software that can help do all of this. Right, secondly, we've got to evenly distribute the resources. There might be rooms. Related to that is staffing and room constraints. You might only have one physics teacher or one art teacher, so that's going to affect the arrangement of subjects. And a couple of other details that we'll deal with in a second. Now, this is a school from a couple of years ago, probably one of the highest performing schools in Victoria, Australia. It's a combined year 11 and 12, although they have some kids doing university maths. It's one class of year 13 maths there. I've listed out some of the constraints. We've got one biology teacher who can't take both of these classes at the same time, one VCD teacher who can't take both of these at the same time. So I've got to make sure all of these classes do not run at the same time. Conversely, I've got these two subjects which we want to run at the same time. This is maths methods, which is the hard maths, and that's general maths, which is a little bit easier. Kids tend to drop out of this subject into that one, so we want a structure which facilitates or makes that easy. I've used software to come up with 6 elective lines or 6 elective blocks. Each column is a list of subjects that run at the same time. So this is the arrangement that gives most of the kids most of their choices. In addition to that, I've had to satisfy these constraints. So the biology teacher will teach in block B and in block C. So they're not running at the same time, so I've satisfied that constraint. Viscom is in year 11, Viscom is in block A, and year 12 is in block F, so I've satisfied that constraint. I satisfied all of these constraints within the construction. Maths methods and general maths need to be on together. They're on block F. So if these kids find the going tough, they can drop back into general maths if there's space in general maths, and it won't affect the rest of their timetable. Now, in addition to that, there are some other fine-tuning. Sometimes schools want the same kids in different classes, so that's another thing that we have to sometimes do. We have to fit part-time staff into this, so that involves quite a bit of clever swapping and changing to make sure part-timers get the days off. We've got a notion of units, which is not so much used in my state, but up in New South Wales, where some subjects run for longer time than others. Related to that is the concept of practical subjects often want double classes and theoretical subjects want singles. We then have to balance class sizes. So if you've got multiple classes, like I've highlighted the year 12 English, I'm running 4 classes. So I'm ideally going to try and balance the class sizes in each of those 4 classes. Now, by the way, some schools don't run English on multiple lines. They might have a curriculum requirement that runs English all together on the same line. We tend not to do that in this state. It's more likely to happen in private schools for various reasons. But in the government system, we tend to run English and maths on different lines because that satisfies this first requirement here, which maximises student choice. And then lastly, we could have a semesterised configuration, which means I might have to create another 6 elective lines to run semester 2. Now that can get quite complicated, so I'll deal with that in another video. So I'll finish off with this concept of units and doubles and singles. The idea there is you've got your elective lines, but if you want to run some of the subjects in a particular line as single periods and other subjects as double, like I've highlighted here that outdoor ed and chemistry want doubles, and in the line B, phys ed, history and physics want doubles, whereas English, maths, religion, literature and accounting want singles. So how do you do that? Well, the only way you can do that is to limit the kids' choices. So really, the kids doing outdoor ed and chemistry also have to be in one of those 3 subjects. They can't be in literature and accounting. So you need to control the allocation of students to classes in that manner. Now that's quite a big constraint on the elective lines, and you'll find that when you do that, that many more kids don't get the subjects that they want. Unless, of course, you're running multiple classes. If you're running lots of multiple classes, then it's more likely to succeed. But the concept is if we constrict the kids' choices in that way, then what I can then do is run this line and this line back to back. So this now is a timetable view. This might be period 1 and this is period 2. So these guys are getting singles, and then the outdoor ed and chemistry I'll run a double. Because the kids who chose outdoor ed and chemistry don't do literature or accounting, there's not going to be a student clash. And then vice versa, I can run one after the other again to get singles, and then I can run these 3 subjects here as a double. So that's the concept of doubles and singles. It requires controlling which classes the kids can get into. The notion of units is really very similar. There's a couple of ways to do units, but it's really the same sort of thing. So in this particular case, we've got these 2 subjects here that run for the whole year, and they run for 6 periods a semester, whereas this subject only runs for 1 semester and that subject runs for the other semester. So in order to make this work, we've got to make sure these kids aren't in those subjects and these kids aren't in those subjects. Then we can just simply do a semester swap over and the kids won't have any clashes. Now, to do all of this, you really need good software, and I will show another video where I've done a lot of testing with a range of different softwares, and we get, depending on the algorithm that the software uses, we get very different results in terms of how many students get their preferences. So that'll be another thing I'd like to deal with. Thank you.